you kindly, thank you, good evening and welcome. It's been clear to us today that really there's been one main controversy in Britain today. It wasn't wars anywhere or anything else. It was the differing views on one television programme last night on a channel known as the BBC. The Beatles' music brings unanimous enthusiasm and approval pretty well. Last night their television show did not bring unanimous enthusiasm and approval, and everyone seems to have been discussing it today. Here is the man most responsible, Mr. Paul McCartney. Top of the evening.
Good evening, Mr. Frost.
Good evening, Mr. McCartney. Why don't you think that the critics like this film?
I don't know, you know. They just didn't seem to like it. I quite liked it myself.
Well, I liked it. I saw it. I didn't see it last night because I was a bit busy, but I saw it today, and I liked it. I mean, with reservations and so on. But I mean, why were people so puzzled by it? Do you think?
I think they thought it was bitty, which it was a bit. You know, but it was supposed to be like that. I think a lot of people were looking for a plot, and there wasn't one.
What was the? I mean, how many people in the audience here actually saw it? Could you put up your hands? I saw it in colour, though, so I've got two. You can see it on colour on BBC Two on January the 6th. This is BBC have bought all the advertising time tonight. But now, were you puzzled by the? Yes. Anyone like to ask Paul a question about it to sort out the answer to something they were puzzled about? Yes. Could you stand up because we can't see you otherwise?
No.
And now for 16 pounds.
Yeah. Well, that's what seems to have happened, you know. But we thought that we could just do a thing. You see, we've been waiting for a couple of years now to make another feature film. And we've been asking people to write stories and write plots. In fact, targets. But nobody's come up with one, you know. So we thought we would do something which isn't like that, you know, which isn't like a real film in as much as it's got a story and a beginning. We'll just do a selection of, you know, we put together a lot of things that we like the look of and see what happens. I liked it.
Lady in the fourth row there, yes.
No.
There's the gentleman next. Oh, the airport's in the West Country Airport. Yeah. But I mean, the aim thing is interesting. I mean, what did you have a point in mind when you? Some point to get across at all when you did this?
No, that's the trouble. It seems that you've got to do everything with a point or an aim. But we tried this one without anything. You know, with no point, no aim. It's like, you know, we make a record album, and all the songs don't necessarily have to fit in with each other, you know. They're just a selection of songs. But when you come to making a film, I don't know, you seem to have a thread to pull it all together. But we thought that doing a mystery tour, you know, it all happens on a bus to this group of people, would be enough of a thread. And then calling it a magical mystery tour, which like a firm advertises a magical mystery tour, and you go on it, and it really is magic. Then anything might happen there, and it wouldn't have a thread if it was magic. To get serious for a moment, David?
I'm glad you did. But I mean, I was seeing it today, it was in different circumstances, in the sense that I saw it when people had been saying it wasn't good, whereas, of course, last night, people saw it thinking it was going to be marvellous. But in the case of what you were saying there, I mean, what's the difference between what you were trying to do here and, say, if you took an EP, which indeed most people have, of Magical Mystery Tour, and played that while looking at a kaleidoscope?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, assuming it was quite a varied kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
What's the difference between that and what you did? I mean, or was that what you were trying to do?
No, that's the trouble, you see. That's the thing, you know, that there's no real difference between that, except that we had people in the kaleidoscope, and we had things happening. But, I mean, you know, it's not really all that disconnected. The trouble is that if you watch it the second time, on January the 5th on BBC, if you watch it the second time, it does grow on you, And this is one thing we forgot, because when you make a record, a lot of people listen to our records and say, well, I don't like that one, But the second time round, they say, well, it's not bad. And then after a few plays, they say,
But are the BBC going to show it 17 times?
Yes. I've just signed the thing.
Yes, today. Yes. But I mean, this is the interesting thing that it seems to me, is the fact that it didn't get across to a lot of people, does that fact alter your opinion of it? Do you say, right, it seems to have failed, or do you still think it's precisely as good as if people had said it was very good?
Yeah, I think it's as good, as I always thought it was. But when we were making it, I think all of us thought, well, this has got a very thin plot. We hope this idea of doing a thing without a plot works, because the one thing we're going to be able to say is it hasn't got a plot. But, we thought you don't need a plot. You don't always need one, because like the things you did today probably didn't have much of a plot. So,
I was plotting all day.
Yeah.
But no, I can see that. But would you call it a success or a failure today?
It's both. It's a success failure. You can't say it was a success, because the papers didn't like it, and that seems to be what people read, to find out what's a success. But I think it's all right. I think the next one will be a lot better, and it'll have a fat plot. As opposed to a thin plot.
As opposed to a thin plot. But I mean, what is success then? What's a success? How would you define that?
I don't know. I wouldn't try. I suppose, if I don't know how many people liked it, who saw it. I suppose, you could take a...
How many people here liked it?
Oh, there's a few, It wasn't much of a success.
They like you much more than they liked it. But I mean, well, you better watch it again and again on BBC, of course.
17 times.
17 times. But I mean, this is the thing that comes back. This seems to be a fascinating thing about any work of art or anything. Can it be a success when people don't like it? It can still to you.
Yeah,
what matters most to you?
Yeah, right. I mean, it obviously matters. If this morning we'd have woken up to find fantastic reviews and everyone said, wow, it's the greatest thing ever, then we would have all said, well, it's a success, and I wouldn't have been on tonight, David. But it doesn't matter all that much, because people said about some of our records, like Strawberry Fields and I Am the Walrus, to name but two, they said those are terrible, it's terrible, you can't do that. You can't talk about letting knickers down on telly, you can't say it. But you can, I've just done it. And it's all right, because especially like in about a year or two, I think these things that didn't look like successes will look a bit more like successes, as people get into that kind of thing.
You said today somewhere, if your first film, the first film that you made yourself, if your first film had been a rave, there wouldn't have been any point in doing any more. What did you mean?
Well, there would have been a point, but it wouldn't have been as much of a challenge to do the next one. At least now we know that we've got not all that much to live up to with our first film.
And it was a deliberate plan.
That's what it was.
Increased response to the second one.
Yeah, no, I
mean, order to get on this program as a failure.
Yes.
But I mean, in terms of the general overall message, to come back to that, how often do you have a message? I know messages are awful word, and therefore one immediately says, no, I don't have a message because it's a corny word. I mean, do you often say, I hope a point gets across to people out of that?
No, I never say that. But anything has a message. Everything has a message. But that's why, it's a terrible word, because you can't just pick out one little thing and say, is that a message? Everything we do is never intended to have a really great, deep message. But it has. It's like everything you do, and like everything everybody does. It's got a fantastic message. But we never intended to have it.
No, when John and Paul were talking, well, like Rishi, for instance, they were saying...
John and George.
Yes, you're Paul.
Yes, that's
you're Paul. And he's George. He's George. He was saying that the main sort of point of his message was sort of know thyself and so on. Is that the point of what you do too?
It's the point of what everybody's doing. It's got to be. It's the only point in anything anybody does ever is to just get to know what it is you're doing. Well, I mean, we don't do it deliberately. We don't sit around thinking, right, okay, we've got to get this message over in our songs. We just do songs. But if you ask the question about the message, I think there is one there. I still don't know what it is.
It's there, but you don't know what it is.
But I'm trying.
And by the 17th time, you'll know.
I should know, yeah.
But I mean, what do you all sort of, when you approach something like this, do you all equally feel the same sort of thing? I mean, like, do you all equally feel the same about? I mean, you don't, obviously, in the sense you're individuals. But I mean, like, do you all have a sort of kinship of feeling about the Maharishi or about the approach to this film, for instance, or do you all not?
No, like any four people, it varies. We don't all exactly feel the same thing. It's pretty near, though. That's why we've kept going as we have, because we happen to be pals. So we've got nearly the same kind of attitudes about most things.
And you'll be able to keep going because of that? I mean...
yes, I can't see us stopping.
I don't think anyone can. But how do you characterise yourself? I mean, it's very clear, isn't it, in the four, people... I mean, in terms of the visual things, people think of sort of Ringo as... I mean, in the visual things, I mean, not particularly in private life, as the sort of clown, and George as the sort of mystic, and John as the rebel. In those sort of caricature categories, what would you come out as?
Oh, I don't know. I keep hearing that I'm the cute one. Well, that's what some fella used to say, I don't know.
What do you put on your passport, actually, against occupation?
Cute one. No, music.
You've had, sort of 5 years of all this now, looking at everything from a very special vantage point. Do you, in general, sort of respect the human race and all that more now, having seen it at close range in this way for 5 years, or less?
Yeah, of course, the human race, it's fantastic. What the human race does, I'm not so keen on that as I used to be.
How do you mean?
Well, the human race does some fantastic things, and that's another program.
We'll get into this.
Okay. Well, you know the kind of thing I mean. That before you come into showbiz, you tend to think, well, it's great, it's fantastic, all the glamour at the top, and that's my aim in life, is to be rich and famous, and you can't see much more beyond that. But of course, when you're rich and famous, you start to wonder what it is you're actually sort of doing, and it can be disappointing if you suddenly realise that everyone is fighting and everyone is, messing it up generally for themselves, folks. Well, I don't blame you, because I do it too. But we've got to get together on this thing, David.
Right, Paul. What did you decide when you were rich and famous was the point of what you were doing?
The point, I can't see a point. I think that the point is just to do it to the best of you, all that. To do it as best as you can, and try and help. That's the only point I can see, is just to try and help yourself and others. It sounds very Christian, and it is,
What are people doing, in a sense, to mess things up for themselves?
Well, for a kick-off, people still believe that thing about, well, it's okay, we've got to fight, because if we don't fight, they'll fight us. And so everyone keeps the myth of war going. And that's got to be a bit silly, because they're killing each other off and fighting and shooting and that. That thing. And then all the little follow-ups to that kind of thought.
What are the little follow-ups?
I can't think, there's a lot of them. Everything that people normally call bad, there's a lot of it, and everyone knows there is. And the best thing you can do normally is just to say, well, turn the telly over here, because it might be good on the other side. But it's that point, where you turn the telly over rather than do something. And I do it too, I don't always get out there and, fight with you, or try and stop them, It's that point where probably people could sort it out instead of turning over, if everyone got down to it. Well, I mean, how do you do that? How do you get everyone to get down to that?
Because, I mean, it always strikes me that while you're associated with all the sort of, new movements that come up, or whether people call them flower power or whatever like that, that you particularly tend to become impatient with simplified, vague explanations. I mean, I imagine to you the phrase, make love, not war, for instance. Does that seem to you a satisfactory phrase, or a totally unsatisfactory phrase because it's too vague?
It's all right, the bits I don't like are the flower power and the mergy beat, and that simplification there. I don't mind the slogans that come out of it as long as they're good ones, like make love, not war. Yeah, it is oversimplified, but the slogan's got to be. You can't have make love and try to avoid the category of arms.
Yes. But I mean, to what extent do you feel I mean, you've got a great influence on people. To what extent do you feel responsible for the effect that you can have on people in the sense that they'll do what you say? I mean, the obvious example is when you say something about LSD or something, people are slightly more likely to do what you say.
Well, I don't feel responsible because I'm always a bit suspicious of people who say they're responsible, because they're not really straight, ordinary people. They always seem to be, it always seems to be a politician getting up and saying, these boys are responsible for the nation's morals. And he says, and I am, and we'll do our best when we get in, if you elect us. And when they get in, they don't, and they're not really responsible. People that say they're responsible always cop out on the responsibilities. So I don't feel really responsible. But at the same time, I'm not trying to hinder things.
Now, for instance, when you said the thing, I know it's months old.
I know there's people, they asked me, that's the trouble. They said to me, have you ever had LSD? And I said, yes. And that was it, And it was a big newspaper story, and I was made to look as though I'd said to the whole nation, take LSD, and I hadn't. I just said, yes, I've taken it. And maybe it would have been better. I said, no, I haven't. But maybe it would have also been better if they hadn't have asked me.
Right. And what would you say now to the young people in this audience about drugs?
Don't bother. There's not much point. They're not. I don't know. There's no need for drugs, but there's no need for a lot of things. There's no need for alcohol either, and there's no need for something. It goes on and on. But you can't just say drugs, because when you say drugs, you've got to say, and also don't drink whiskey and don't, and then you sound like one of those fellas that says it. And I'm not.
The difference being obviously that we've got the problem with alcohol and we can do without. Everyone having the problem with drugs.
I don't think there's any need for drugs anyway.
Is there anything else that if you ran into tomorrow some of your contemporaries in Liverpool 6 years ago, is there anything that with the fantastically special life you've had in the last 5 years that you've learned that you could tell them that they might not have realised about living?
I don't know really. There's a lot of hints I could offer. I don't know if I'd be able to take them because I don't think I would have ever taken them. There's a lot of hints about if you're trying to make money, because that is very easy really. A lot of people don't realise how easy it is because a lot of people work there with the boss there, with there and there and there, and are satisfied to do that. And yet at the same time they always say, well look, I want to be there. They never make any effort to be there. And in fact it's not very difficult to do that.
How is it easy?
Well, you know.
Yes,
at one stage you would
what I do, yes.
It was very difficult.
Get a do the same together and do a process. But but I wouldn't say it's easy. This is the interesting thing. You've got hints to people that it's easy. We've got a way for people to make money in the second half of the program with cockroach racing. But we'll come to that later. But I wouldn't say it's easy. That's the difference.
Well, I think that I've always found it difficult to make money when I wasn't being myself. I really found it because I was being the fellow in that position. That's what I thought I had to be in order to make money on yesterday. But I never realised that, in fact, if you're in that position, producing a show or something, you want the fellow in this position to be himself and not to say, yes, sir, sorry, sir. You want him to say, well, look, I've got a good idea for this. What I think is, like he would when he gets home from work, He says, this is a boss today. Well, I could have told him a thing or two. We should do.
Yeah, but our boss is as lovely as that.
No, no, and that brings me to bosses.
You know, because they should do the same thing. They don't realise it either.
Because surely the difference is that you and I are in areas like television or music or whatever, where there isn't a great organisation and a great system and sort of individual people with ideas. At least there's a way for them to express their ideas. But there may not be that in, for instance, the police force or, you know, in the garment industry or something like that.
Yeah, well, okay, I can only speak for my bit of it, you know. I could tell them how to make money in entertainment. I wouldn't offer advice on the police.
Paul McCartney, this is it. But, I mean, what about the rest? Anything else other than the money side that when you meet those contenders?
Advice? No, the only advice, you know, I mean, is the one that I've always had of people when, you know, what's it like? To always be yourself, you know.
And a lot of things you don't take advice, do you? I mean, you...
Well, because the advice is often to not be yourself, you know. It's like the show last night, you know, the advice, really, had we taken it after today's spirit, would have been, now, you get a good choreographer, lads, and a good director, you know, a good director, producer, and get a lot of money behind you, and we'll have 5,000 dancing girls, and we'll have you hanging from a Christmas tree, you know. And it'll be great because it'll be festive, and it's true, you know, it would have been great and festive and everything, but we thought, well, we'll try it our way, you know, and if it doesn't quite work, well, all right, you know. So, you know, it doesn't matter too much that it wasn't the success that we hoped, you know, for that reason, because we still at least were able to be ourselves and do what we thought was right.
But what, what you think is right next time may be different as a result of this experience.
Yes, it will be, yes. But that's the only way we can learn, you know. If we learn by putting ourselves in somebody else's hands and then letting them say, well, look, you've got to do this, and you've got to go here, and you've got to go there, you know, then it wouldn't be us doing it. And that's always been the point of what we've done. You know, we've always just made records according to how we thought they should have been made. And a lot of people said, well, that's not the way they're doing it now, you know. And we said, well, we quite like them, you know, give it a go. We'll carry on, we'll do them like this, and see if you like them when you get used to them. And it's worked.
It's working fantastically in the music area. The thing about, I mean, the staggering thing is obviously the degree to which any learning you've got to do is so much in public, isn't it?
Yes, that's the trouble.
You know, you can't do it privately. No. We'll take a break there. Paul stays for the great top rope race. The art of foot and mouth everywhere. We'll be back in a sight.